Ampex is an American electronics company founded in 1944 by Alexander M. Poniatoff. The name Ampex is an acronym created by its founder, which stands for Alexander M. Poniatoff Excellence. At one time public, the remaining ongoing business unit was acquired by Delta Information Systems in October 2014, with the original parent, Ampex Corporation, ceasing operations in October 2014. Ampex's first great success was a line of reel-to-reel tape recorders developed from the German wartime magnetophone system at the behest of Bing Crosby. Ampex quickly became a leader in audio tape technology, developing many of the analog recording formats for both music and movies that remained in use into the 1990s. Starting in the 1950s, the company began developing videotape recorders, which set the studio standards for decades, and later introduced the helical scan concept that make home video players possible. They also introduced multi-track recording, slow motion and instant playback television, and a host of other advances. Ampex's tape business was rendered obsolete during the 1990s, and the company turned to digital storage products. They never managed to become a player in this field, and the company was moribund by the 2000s. Origin: Russian inventor Alexander M.Poniatoff established the company in San Carlos, California, in 1944 as the Ampex Electric and Manufacturing Company. The name came from his initials plus X, to avoid using the name Amp already in use. During World War II, Ampex was a small manufacturer of high-quality electric motors and generators for radars that used Alnico 5 magnets from General Electric. Ampex's first offices were at 1313 Laurel Street, San Carlos, California, Howard Avenue, at Laurel. Near the end of the war, while serving in the U.S. Army Signal Corps, Major Jack Mullen was assigned to investigate German radio and electronics experiments. He discovered the magnetophones with AC biasing on a trip to Radio Frankfurt. The device produced much better fidelity than shellac records. Mullen acquired 2 magnetophone recorders and 50 reels of BASF Type L tape, and brought them to America where he produced modified versions. He demonstrated them to the Institute of Radio Engineers in San Francisco on May 16, 1946. Bing Crosby, a big star on radio at the time, was receptive to the idea of pre-recording his radio programs. He disliked the regimentation of live broadcasts, and much preferred the relaxed atmosphere of the recording studio. He had already asked the NBC network to let him pre-record his 1944-45 series on transcription discs, but the network refused. So Crosby had withdrawn from live radio for a year and returned for the 1946-47 season only reluctantly. Another possible motivation wasn't so much that Crosby wanted the more relaxed atmosphere of taping versus live, but that live network radio required performing 2 identical shows a night, one for the East Coast and one for the West Coast. This may have been what Crosby was hoping to avoid, as that was the argument Crosby used with the radio network when he asked to use transcription disc recordings of his show. Those recordings were made directly from the live East Coast show, as were the later taped versions. In June 1947, Mullen, who was pitching the technology to the major Hollywood movie studios, got the chance to demonstrate his modified tape recorders to Crosby. When Crosby heard a demonstration of Mullen's tape recorders, he immediately saw the potential of the new technology and commissioned Mullen to prepare a test recording of his radio show. Ampex was finishing its prototype of the Model 200 tape recorder, and Mullen used the first 2 models as soon as they were built. After a successful test broadcast, ABC agreed to allow Crosby to pre-record his shows on tape. Crosby immediately appointed Mullen as his chief engineer and placed an order for $50,000 worth of the new recorders so that Ampex could develop a commercial production model from the prototypes. Crosby Enterprises was Ampex's West Coast representative until 1957. Early tape recorders. The company's first tape recorder, the Ampex Model 200A, was first shipped in April 1948. The first two units, serial numbers Chapter 1 and 2, were used to record the Bing Crosby Show. The American Broadcasting Company used these recorders along with 3M Scotch 111 gamma ferric oxide coated acetate tape for the first ever U.S. delayed radio broadcast of the Bing Crosby Show. Ampex tape recorders revolutionized the radio and recording industries because of their superior audio quality and ease of operation over audio disc cutting lathes. During the early 1950s, Ampex began marketing 1- and 2-track machines using 1/4-inch tape. The line soon expanded into 3- and 4-track models using 1/2-inch tape. In the early 1950s, Ampex moved to 934 Charter Street, Redwood City, California. Ampex acquired Audio Industries in 1959, which became the Ampex Magnetic Tape Division, headquartered in Opelika, Alabama. This made Ampex a manufacturer of both recorders and tape. By the end of that decade, Ampex products were much in demand by top recording studios worldwide. In 1952, movie producer Mike Todd asked Ampex to develop a high-fidelity movie sound system using sound magnetically recorded on the film itself, as contrasted with the technology of the time, which used magnetic tracks on a separate film. The result of this development was the CinemaScope Todd-Lau motion picture sound system, which was first used in movies such as The Robe in 35mm and Oklahoma in 70mm. In 1960, the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences awarded Ampex an Oscar for technical achievement as a result of this development. Les Paul, a friend of Crosby's and a regular guest on his shows, had already been experimenting with overdubbed recordings on disc. He received an early portable Ampex Model 200A from Crosby. He invented sound-on-sound recording using this machine. He placed an additional playback head, located before the conventional array's record playback heads. This allowed Paul to play along with a previously recorded track, both of which were mixed together onto a new track. This was a destructive process because the original recording was recorded over professional 8-track recorders. Ampex built a handful of multi-track machines during the late 1950s that could record as many as 8 tracks on 1-inch tape. The project was overseen by Ross Snyder, Ampex manager of special products. To make the multi-track recorder work, Snyder invented the cell-sync process, which used some tracks on the head for playback and other tracks on the head for recording. This made the newly recorded material be in sync with the existing recorder tracks. The first of these machines cost $10,000 and was installed in Les Paul's home recording studio by David Sarza. In 1967, Ampex responded to demand by stepping up production of their 8-track machines with the production model MM1000. Like earlier 8-track machines of this era, it used 1-inch tape, 16 and 24-track recorders. In 1966, Ampex built their first 16-track recorder, the Model AG-1000, at the request of Mirror Sound Studios in New York City. In 1967, Ampex introduced a 16-track version of the MM1000, which was the world's first 16-track professional tape recorder put into mass production. Both used a 2-inch tape transport design adapted from the video recording division. The 16-track MM1000 quickly became legendary for its tremendous flexibility, reliability and outstanding sound quality. This brought about the golden age of large-format analog multi-track recorders, which would last into the mid-1990s. MCI built the first 24-track recorder in 1968, which was installed at TTG Studios in Los Angeles. Later machines built by Ampex starting in 1969 would have as many as 24 tracks on 2-inch tape. In addition to this, the introduction of SMPTE timecode allowed studios to run multiple machines in perfect synchronization, making the number of available tracks virtually unlimited. By the late 1970s, Ampex faced tough competition from Struder and Japanese manufacturers such as Otari and Sony. In 1979, Ampex introduced their most advanced 24-track recorder, the model ATR-124. It was considered by many to be the finest machine of its type. The ATR-124 was ruggedly constructed and had audio specifications that nearly rivaled the first digital recording machines. However, sales of the ATR-124 were slow due to the machine's high price tag. Ampex sold only about 50 or 60 ATR-124 machines, and withdrew from the professional audio tape recorder market entirely in 1983. The 1990s. By the 1990s, Ampex focused more on video recorders, instrumentation recorders, and data recorders. In 1991, Ampex sold their professional audio recorder line to Sprague Magnetics. The Ampex Recording Media Corporation spun off in 1995 as Quantigy Inc., and is now called Quantigy Recording Solutions. Consumer models. Ampex Model 1250 Tube Stereo Tape Recorder C. 1962, designed for the high-end consumer market. Ad for Ampex 970 Stereo Quarter-Track Tape Deck circa 1960. The Model 970 included a small 5-watt stereo tube playback amplifier and speakers. The 5-watt Ampex tube stereo amplifier as it lay hidden inside the Model 970, shown in photo above. Video technology. Quadruplex. Starting in the early 1950s, RCA, Bing Crosby and others tried to record analog video on very fast-moving magnetic tape. As early as 1952, Ampex developed prototype videotape recorders that used a spinning head and relatively slow-moving tape. In early 1956, a team led by Charles Ginsberg produced the first videotape recorder. A young, 19-year-old engineer, Ray Dolby, was also part of the team. Ampex demonstrated the VR1000, which was the first of Ampex's line of 2-inch quadruplex videotape recorders, on March 14, 1956. At the National Association of Radio and Television Broadcasters in Chicago. The first magnetically recorded time-delayed television network program using the new Ampex quadruplex recording system was CBS's Douglas Edwards and the News on November 30, 1956. The quad head assembly rotates at 14,400 revolutions per minute. The 4 head pieces are switched successively so that recorded stripes cross the video portion, so that head-to-tape write speed is well in excess of the 15-inch per second physical motion. They wrote the video vertically across the width of a tape that was 2 inches wide and ran at 15 inches per second. This allowed hour-long television programs to be recorded on one reel of tape. In 1956, one reel of tape cost $300, and Ampex advertised the cost of the recorder as $45,000. A 7.5-inch per second version was released later, and this required a new, narrower head wheel. This vertical writing facilitated mechanical editing. Once the control track was developed to display the pulse that indicates where a frame ends and the next one begins. Later, Ampex developed electronic editing. The National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences awarded Ampex its first Emmy in 1957 for this development. Ampex received a total of 12 Emmys for its technical video achievements. In 1959, Richard Nixon, then Vice President, and Nikita Khrushchev held discussions at the Moscow Trade Fair, which became known as the Kitchen Debate, because they were mostly held in the kitchen of a suburban model house. The discussions were recorded on an Ampex color videotape recorder, and during the debate Nixon pointed this out as one of the many American technological advances. In 1967, Ampex introduced the Ampex VR3000 portable broadcast video recorder, which revolutionized the recording of broadcast-quality television in the field without the need for long cables and large support vehicles. Broadcast-quality images could now be shot anywhere, including from airplanes, helicopters and boats. The quadruplex format dominated the broadcast industry for a quarter of a century. The format was licensed to RCA for use in their television tape recorders. Ampex's invention revolutionized the television production industry by eliminating the kinescope process of time-shifting television programs, which required the use of motion picture film. For archival purposes, the kinescope method continued to be used for some years. Film was still preferred by archivists. The Ampex broadcast videotape recorder facilitated time zone broadcast delay so that networks could air programming at the same hour in various time zones. Ampex had trademarked the name videotape, so competitor RCA called the medium TV tape or television tape. The terms eventually became genericized, and videotape is commonly used today. While the quadruplex recording system per se is no longer in use, the principle evolved into the helical scanning technique used in virtually all videotape machines, such as those using the consumer formats known as VHS and the briefly successful Sony Betamax format. One of the key engineers in the development of the quadruplex video recorder for Ampex was Ray Dolby, who worked under Charlie Ginsberg and went on to form Dolby Laboratories, a pioneer in audio noise reduction systems. Dolby's contribution to the videotape system was limited to the mathematics behind the reactance tube FM modulator, as videotape then used FM modulation for the video portion. Another contributor designed the FM modulator itself. Dolby left Ampex to seek a PhD in physics in England, which is where Dolby Labs was later founded, before Dolby moved back to San Francisco. Dolby's brother Dale was also an engineer at Ampex. VR8000 in 1961, Ampex introduced the first helical scan video recorder, the VR8000, which recorded video using helical scan recording technology on 2-inch tape. Ampex 2-inch helical VTR. Ampex 2-inch helical VTRs were manufactured from 1963 to 1970. Model VR1500 for home, the VR660 for broadcast television systems, industrial companies, educational institutions, and a few for in-flight entertainment. The VR1500 and VR660 found service at educational institutions, especially due to their relatively low cost versus 2-inch quadruplex VTRs. These machines were simple to operate, reliable, small in size and produced for their time very good video without the complexity of the larger and much more complex two machines. HS100 and HS200 SLOMO disc recorder. In March 1967, Ampex introduced the HS100 video disc recorder. The system was developed by Ampex at the request of the American Broadcasting Company for a variety of sports broadcast uses. The video was recorded on analog magnetic disc. The disc weighed 5 pounds, 2.3 kilograms and rotated at 60 rps, 3,600 revolutions per minute. One NTSC unit could record 30 seconds of video, PAL units 36 seconds. The video could then be played back in slow motion, stop action to freeze frame. A more deluxe version, the HS200, was introduced around 1971, and provided a large control console with variable speed playback. This made it ideal for instant replay for sports events and precise timing control in post-production service. CBS TV was the first to use the technique during live sportscasts, though it was quickly adopted by all American TV networks. The HS200, which was an HS100 connected to a control console when combined called the HS200, had greater precise frame and timing control capability, lending itself to post-production applications like special effects and titles. The HS200 had a frame-accurate timing computer that enabled frame-accurate cuts and dissolved transitions by way of a 2-input video switcher. Slow-motion sequences could likewise be programmed and could be triggered to begin via an external control pulse, such as might come from an external VTR editor like the Ampex VR2000 VTR with Editech. The HS200 was the first system capable of single-frame video animation recording, using magnetic discs as opposed to videotape. The HS200 also provided a readout with specific frame numbers showing from the 900 frames available. Sequences could be triggered to start from any of these 900 frames with frame-accurate repeatability for creative fine-tuning of sequence start and end points. Type A 1-inch Type A videotape was an open-reel helical scan videotape format developed by Ampex in 1965. One of the first standardized open-reel videotape formats in the 1-inch width. Most others of that size at that time were proprietary. Type C 1-inch Type C videotape was a professional open-reel videotape format co-developed and introduced by Ampex and Sony in 1976. It became the replacement in the professional video and television broadcast industries for the then incumbent quadruplex. D2D2 is a digital videotape format created by Ampex and other manufacturers and introduced at the 1988 NAB convention as a lower-cost alternative to the D1 format. Like D1, D2 video is uncompressed. However, it saves bandwidth and other costs by sampling a fully encoded NTSC or PAL composite video signal, and storing it directly to magnetic tape, rather than sampling component video. This is known as digital composite. DCT and DST digital component technology and data storage technology are VTR and data storage devices respectively, created by Ampex in 1992. Both were similar to the D1 and D2 VTR formats, using a 19mm width, with the DCT format using DCT video compression, also its namesake. The DCT and DST formats yielded relatively high capacity and speed for data and video. Double-density DST data storage was introduced in 1996. The final generation of these products were quad-density, introduced in 2000, resulting in a large cartridge holding 660 GB of data.